Hi, it's Jack, and this is the podcast version of this episode. If you want to read the words as they're being analysed, then if you're on Spotify, you can become a subscriber of this channel or head over to the YouTube channel. And on both platforms, you can also sign up to get exclusive episodes and early access to the regular weekly episodes too. Tonya Harding swears she had nothing to do with the attack on Nancy Kerrigan, but her own words say otherwise to me. In this episode, I'll show you how her language might expose a truth she never meant to reveal.
I had no prior knowledge of the planned assault on Nancy Kerrigan. I am responsible, however, for failing to report things I learned about the assault when I returned home from nationals.
Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new to this, maybe you're here because you're interested in Tonya Harding. What I do here is different from anywhere else. Every time I strip away everything apart from the words that are said by the person at the centre of the story. And then I use my process of statement investigation to give you the key to seeing where deception could be happening, where the truth lies, and also the motivations of the person talking as well. It's a process that I use with investigators, corporate clients, and the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. So let's deal with the case of Tonya Harding. Now, this subject was suggested by someone in the Never a Truer Word Facebook group. There's a link in the show description for you if you want to join that group, where we discuss words, statements, and also you can make suggestions of content for us to cover here on Never a Truer Word. So Tonya Harding, going back to the 90s for this, and for a while in the 1990s, she was the most famous, or maybe infamous, sports personality in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest is Tonya Harding.
So in a nutshell, Tonya Harding was an Olympic ice skater, and in 1994, Tonya's biggest American rival was Nancy Kerrigan, and Nancy was attacked by someone trying to break her legs so that she couldn't compete against Tonya, especially in the upcoming Winter Olympics. Now, the person who was behind that attack, in Tonya's words, was her husband at the time, a guy called Jeff. Tonya says she had nothing to do with the commissioning of it. She did not know this attack was going to happen, and she found out later on after the attack that it was her husband that was behind it. Many people think that Tonya stood to gain from the attack and was part of commissioning and wanting this attack to happen. So that's what we're going to look at as we look at a couple of interviews from way back then in 1994 and 1996 to dig into Tonya Harding's words, to look at how she talks about this, to see if she's telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And what I'm going to ask you to listen out for when we hear Tonya talk is avoidance. Now, why do we avoid things? Well, listen, in general, we want to avoid lying. We hate telling lies. It's hard work, it's stressful, and if we get caught in a lie, it's a bad thing. So we'd much rather stick to the truth. However, if the truth is nasty, if it's not something we want to get out, then we avoid answering questions or avoid certain topics of discussion and talk about something else as well. I think this is something that we might see as we listen to Tonya Harding way back in 1994.
When somebody plea bargains to something, in some people's minds it's going to say they only cut the deal because she was guilty of more, and that's why they cut the deal. What do you say to those people?
I don't like your wording, first of all. I didn't cut a deal. I made a plea agreement with the district attorney in the court system. And it wasn't, cutting a deal. It was like, because my life has been a roller coaster, for 2 months, and it was just tearing me apart. It's just been too much for me to handle. I couldn't handle anymore. I couldn't go on with it, So I just wanted to get it over with, so I can go on with my life.
Your dream, your life's dream, has always been to win a gold medal, to go down in the record books for that. Unfortunately, now you have a criminal record. You're a convicted felon. What went wrong?
Being associated with people I shouldn't have been associated with.
What is there, do you think, in your character that let that happen, that let you make that mistake?
Because my skating was the most important thing to me. And I would do anything to do that.
Okay, there is Nancy talking way back when. Some edits, I think, there as it was presented. I'll point them out as we go. The very first question that we hear there is when somebody plea bargains with something, in some people's minds, it's going to say they only cut the deal because she was guilty of more. And that's why they cut the deal. What do you say to those people? And Nancy says, I don't like your wording, first of all. I didn't cut a deal. I made a plea agreement with the district attorney and the court system. And it wasn't, cutting a deal. Bit of commanding, ordering language there. I get the impression this is someone who's used to being in charge, because she shuts that down very, very quickly. I don't like your wording, first of all. And then she goes into avoidance, because the question is, what do you say to those people? And she doesn't go and answer the question and say something to those people, the people that say she cut a deal because she's guilty of a lot more. What she does say is, I didn't cut a deal. I made a plea agreement. Now, this is just classic personal definitions. We use this a lot. Sometimes we have personal definitions of how we think about things, and that's how we word things. Sometimes we like to word things very carefully, because using a personal definition for something means that it gives us a little bit of comfort. And I think that's what's going on here. And she's being upfront about it here. She's saying that a plea agreement to her is not cutting a deal. One thing's a plea agreement. Cutting a deal would be something completely different. And so instead of dealing with the question, she shuts it down, says, I'm not going to talk about it in the terms that you want to talk about it. I'm going to give you my personal definitions here. And it wasn't, cutting a deal is what she says there. Now, something else to watch for as we listen to Tonya talk is her using the phrase, Some people use, as a crutch. They haven't really thought about what it is they want to say next. So they talk and talk and talk and then say something else, like that. However, some people use as a way of connecting with the speaker to see, have they heard what I'm saying? When I say do I get something back? That something back might just be an eye flash. It might be a nod. It might be, yeah, I know, or even I don't know. That's why some people use Some people use it as a crutch. Some people use it to connect with the speaker and to ensure they're following and to ensure they're understanding what is being said. Now, Tonya uses a lot. And I wonder if it's a marker of deception in Tonya. I wonder right now, we'll see as we go how she uses it, because what she is doing with is ensuring that what she's just said has been heard and understood. Because when someone is being deceptive, the deceptive things they say, it's very important for them that these deceptive things are heard and understood. Because in everything they're saying, the deception, the lie, is the most important thing they're saying. They want to ensure that it's been heard and they want to ensure it's being understood. Otherwise, what's the point of lying? If someone's not properly listening or connecting with what is being said, or if the lie is not landing, if people don't understand what it is, what's the point in doing it? So the to liars can be checking in. Did you hear that lie? Do you agree with what I said? Are you buying it? Is that what's going on with Tonya? Listen out for knows as we go through this analysis. She says, it was like, because my life has been a roller coaster, for 2 months, and it was just tearing me apart. So we've got that, and I think what she's trying to do here is explain why she made this plea bargain, cut a deal, however you want to say it, because my life has been a roller coaster, for 2 months. So she wants people to understand, and she wants the interviewer to know my life's been a roller coaster. That's why I made this plea bargain, not for any other reason, not because that I'm guilty of so much more and just wanted this off my plate and to move on. So again, we've got that, at the very least, after a very important thing for Tonya to say. And it was just tearing me apart. Now we have that word just in there, which often indicates deception. This use of just is to minimize things. It was just tearing me apart. Only focus on the fact I was being torn apart. There were lots of other things happening, but I want you to focus only on one thing, and I'm going to label it just, and I'm going to say that was all that was happening. It was just tearing me apart. And we can imagine, with everything going on in her life at the time, there was more going on than this just tearing her apart. But what you can see here as well is so far, she's been very low on specifics. I don't get a real feeling as to why she cut this plea deal there. She's not, she's saying things like, my life has been a roller coaster, it was tearing me apart, but she doesn't say what the roller coasters consisted of or what was tearing her apart around this. Those are cliches. My life has been a roller coaster, it was just tearing me apart. Cliches are cliches because people say them a lot. And sometimes when people are trying to give a false impression, they don't have the authentic language within themselves to convey that because it hasn't happened to them. They don't have the words to convey what has happened. So they lean on cliche, things that everyone says at some point. Life has been a roller coaster. It was just tearing me apart. But what was the roller coaster? What was tearing her apart? She's very low on specifics. I think there's an edit here, so the next bit maybe doesn't flow from what she just said. She says, it's just been too much for me to handle. I couldn't handle anymore. It's just been too much for me to handle. Again, we've got this just on everything. So it was just tearing her apart. It's just been too much for me to handle. Focus on these things of suffering that I had been going through. But again, it's just been too much for me to handle. What has? I couldn't handle any more. Of what? I couldn't go on with it, she says. Again, what is it? You know, what she's saying here is the word it. It's undefined. It could mean I couldn't go on with lying because I was involved and, you know, the whole thing was my idea. Or it could be I couldn't go on with everyone thinking that and it's not true. It could be I couldn't go on with knowing that it was my husband that was behind all of this and that really, really devastated me. She doesn't tell us what it is. Very low in specifics. I couldn't go on with it. You know, we've got another you know. So I just wanted to get it over with. You know, so we have just again wanted to get it over with. You know, so I can go on with my life. So many uses of just here that I think there is a lot more to the decision to make this plea deal than the things that she has said. And you'll say, you know, I wanted to get on with my life. And so in her own words, and we need to trust her own words, believe her own words. Her motivation for the plea deal was moving on. But what didn't enter into her words there, so we can say did not enter into her mind, was justice for Nancy Kerrigan, who was attacked. For the truth to come out, or for the truth to be told. Your dream, your life goal has always been to win a gold medal, to go down in the record books for that, says the interviewer. Unfortunately, now you have a criminal record. You're a convicted felon. What went wrong? And Nancy says, being associated with people I shouldn't have been associated with. So, being associated with people I shouldn't have been associated with. Again, we've got lots of question marks over what does this actually mean. Being associated is no ownership there. There's no pronoun to own it. She's not taking any ownership of this whatsoever. It's not I was associated with or I was associating with people I shouldn't have. It's being associated. Now, being associated just can mean a connection that someone else makes. What went wrong? Being associated. That can be a connection from the outside in. I'm going to associate Tonya Harding with this. She doesn't take any ownership of the association there. Being associated with people. Now, people is regularly used in deception again because it's very nondescript. It's not specific. If someone tells you people are saying this or people have seen you doing that, ask who are these people? Ask for some specifics because people, again, it's not a word that always means someone lying to you, but it's used in deception so often. Being associated with people, well, who are those people I shouldn't have been associated with? So in her own words there, the trouble is the association was made. She was associated with these people. Not that she socialized with these people, not that she associated with these people, but that someone made the association. What is there, do you think, in your character that let that happen, that let you make that mistake, says the interviewer. Because my skating was the most important thing to me, and I would do anything to do that. Big admission there. She would do anything to do skating. Now, she says that one of the things that she wouldn't do was organise an attack on Nancy Kerrigan in general, in her gist, in her defence, in everything that she said since the attack. However, here in her words, she says she would do anything to do skating because my skating was the most important thing to me and I would do anything to do that. Well, would you do anything? You certainly said you would do anything. So in that first part there, she's a very strong person. I can see that. She's a very, very strong person, very determined, very used to having her own way and getting her own way through using words. But she avoids specifics in everything that she talked about there. It's very, very vague. There's no specifics in there whatsoever. And there's an avoidance of denial. It was a perfect question to say, no, I got this plea deal and said that I did all the things that I did and came up and fessed up and was honest and said I did all the things I did. But she doesn't take that on whatsoever. She avoids there giving any denial. Now, that's not the same as admitting it, but it is avoiding giving a denial. Now, in this whole story, and I'd forgotten lots of this, there was a movie made about it, which I love, but forgotten a lot of the story. There is evidence that points towards Tonya having some involvement in this plot. We're going to see later on how she talks about that. But let's go back to 1994 and more from Tonya.
Even now, there are people who just, for whatever reason, think that you had to be in on the attack on Nancy Kerrigan before it happened. Were you?
No, I was not. I did not know anything about it until I got home. And in the next 2 days, between Monday night when I got home on the 10th and then Wednesday, that's when I found out that Sean was involved and Jeff was involved. Well, I heard Sean and Jeff talking about the FBI and stuff like this, and about them calling and talking to them and everything. And I don't know, they just seemed really worried, and they started talking about, well, maybe we should say this and we should say that.
Did there come a moment when they said, this is what happened, this is what we did?
To this day, you know, Jeff has not ever said to me that he did it.
You realize that a lot of people are going to have trouble swallowing that. For a lot of people, they can't understand how you found out this guy, this person close to me, and these other people are involved in this heinous, brutal assault on an innocent individual, and why you don't go, what's the matter with you? I'm going right to the police. Why didn't you do that?
Because I was scared. At first I didn't believe it was true, you know, but then when I found out, then it was all so quick that it just all happened just like you can snap your fingers.
So the question starts off, even now there are people who just for whatever reason think that you had to be in on the attack on Nancy Kerrigan before it happened. Were you? And she says, no, I was not. I did not know anything about it until I got home. Now, I said in the previous part, she issued no denial. And here comes a denial. But how reliable is it? Well, it's a yes-no question. Were you? I.e., were you involved on the attack? You had to be in on the attack. Were you? And her first word is no. Good start. Really good start. No. And then it all gets a little bit strange. No, I was not, is what she said. If you listen to her talk a lot more, then she uses contractions like wasn't, didn't, shouldn't. But here she talks very formally. No, I was not. I did not know anything about it. No, I was not. I did not know anything about it. Now, sometimes people, when they are issuing deceptive denials, will talk in that more formal way. They won't use the abbreviation, the contracted form, wasn't, did not, because they think it makes them sound more credible, more believable if they use this more formal way of talking. But you'll see elsewhere that she does use these contractions. But here we've got this more formal, I was not, and I did not know anything about it until I got home. So I did not know anything about it until I got home. Now, I did not know anything about it. Again, this is 100% absolute. Maybe true, maybe not. Until I got home. Now, when I got home is, so until I got home, rather, if it was when I got home, that would be a time. Anything about it until when I got home. It's just until I got home. So she's giving us a time thing with until, but no time on got home. It's just there. And again, what is it? I did not know anything about it. This could be she hadn't heard about the attack on Nancy at all. I did not know anything about it because I hadn't heard about the attack on Nancy until I got home. Or it could be I did not know anything about it, the plot to attack Nancy, until I got home. The specifics are very, very low here. She carries on. And in the next 2 days, between Monday night when I got home on the 10th and Wednesday, that's when I found out that Sean was involved and Jeff was involved. So then there, she says, I did not know anything about it until I got home. So this is when she found out about when I got home. But then she tells us it took 2 days. In the next 2 days, between Monday night when I got home on the 10th and the Wednesday, that's when I found out that Sean was involved and Jeff was involved. Did she find out instantly? Or did it take 2 days? Was there not one point where she found this out and was involved? Jeff was involved. Sean was involved. Not who did it. not who carried out the attack. It's the fact they were involved in the attack. Now, that's interesting. Now, these guys didn't actually physically do the attack. Maybe that is why she has said that. One other thing here that gets me is that Jeff is her husband, and yet Sean is the person she mentions first. I would expect someone to mention the person closest to them first, and as they list people, get further and further and further away. Think about when you sign a card, and you might sign it from yourself, from Jack, and then you might sign it from other members of the family, starting with your partner and then the kids, or that sort of thing. If you sign something at work, you might sign it from yourself and then the people in your team, and then a wider thing. However it is, you start close and you go further away. But she starts with Sean, and then she mentions Jeff, her husband at the time, secondly. I think there's an edit again coming up here. So this might not flow exactly. She says, I heard Sean and Jeff talking about the FBI and stuff like this, and about them calling and talking to them and everything. So there's one sentence there. Let's break that down. We've got Sean first again, and Jeff second. Now, is this the same thing, that for some reason Sean is the most important thing when she's discussing this and not Jeff? Or is there something else at play with this one? Because I heard Sean talk, is what she says. She's going to say, I heard Sean talking. I presume I heard Sean talking about the FBI, because that's what she goes on to say. But she stops halfway through the talking. She says, I heard Sean talk and Jeff talking about the FBI. So did she not hear Jeff talking? Is this being added in to help in some way? Was it all about her finding out Sean was involved? I heard Sean talk and Jeff talking about the FBI. Then it goes very vague. Talking about the FBI and stuff like this. What does that mean? What is stuff like this? And about them calling and talking to them and everything. Very, very vague. What did she hear? Sean and Jeff talking about the FBI and stuff like this, and calling and talking to them and everything. Don't quite know what it was that she heard apart from talking about the FBI, stuff like this, everything, calling, talking, again, really low on the specifics. She carries on, and I don't know, they just seemed really worried, and they started talking about, well, maybe we should say this, maybe we should say that. Let's break that down. I don't know. Now, number one, she's got don't. It's not do not. It's don't. I don't know. So she does do those contractions, those abbreviated versions of the phrases. I don't know is what she says, but that's present tense. That means that is she talking there when she's talking? Is that what she's saying? I don't know now? Or is it, I didn't know at the time? Is that what she meant to say? Or is it present tense because she was making it up? I didn't know, but because we're making it up, at the time we're making it up, we can use present tense. I don't know. They just seemed really worried. We've got just again, so that suggests to me something more is being hidden around this, if I didn't think that already from vagueness, like stuff like that and everything. They just seemed really worried. A persuasive word there, really. They were really worried, not just worried, they were really worried. Persuasive word there. And they started talking about, well, maybe we should say this and maybe we should say that. What's this and that? Again, the specifics are really, really low. And where is Tonya in this story? Let me read it again and just think, where is she? Is she hearing this? Is she overhearing this? I heard Sean and Jeff talking about the FBI and stuff like this, and about them calling and talking to them and everything. And I don't know. They just seemed really worried, and they started talking about, well, maybe we should say this, maybe we should say that. Where was Tonya when this was happening? And did she hear them talking, like having a conversation? Or did she overhear them from somewhere? She doesn't really say. Again, the specifics are really low. It's hard to picture what she's talking about. When it's hard to picture, it might mean the language is not authentically reflecting a remembered event. Did there come a moment when they said, this is what happened, this is what we did? Asked the interviewer. A yes or no question. Yes, there was a moment. No, there was a moment. But that's what I asked, because, when did you find out? And she says, when I got home. And then she says, it took 2 days to find out. She says, to this day, Jeff has not ever said to me that he did it. To this day, So we've got that marker there again. Is this something that's deceptive? Jeff has not ever said to me that he did it. So she doesn't say yes or no. She doesn't say there was a moment. I want you to remember that for something that we're going to look at later. Also, by the way, we're going to hear her talk about her relationship with Jeff, the husband, at the time as well, which is very interesting. To this day, Jeff has not said to me ever that he did it. You'll notice that Sean has disappeared from that, because the question is about they. Did there come a moment when they said, and before she's been talking about Sean and she's been talking about Jeff, she only answers the Jeff part of the question there. The interviewer says, you realise a lot of people are going to have trouble swallowing that. For a lot of people, they can't understand how you found out this guy, this person close to me, and these other people are involved in this heinous, brutal assault on an innocent individual. Body language fans, go back and rewatch the video if you've got the video version of this. Tonya blinks when Nancy is referred to as an innocent individual. What does that say to you? Do let me know in the comments. And you didn't go, what's the matter with you? I'm going right to the police. Tonya's reply is, because I was scared. That's very straightforward. Very few words compared to some of the other answers that she's given, which are full and bloated full of nothingness. Very few words. So I believe that. I was scared. She doesn't say what she was scared of, though, so I don't know what it was she was scared of, but I do believe at that time she was scared. Then she says, at first, I didn't believe it was true. You know, and when I found out, and it was all so quick, it all happened just like you can snap your fingers. She seems to describe finding out as both a slow burn and a very quick process. You know, it was the fact she overheard stuff and, you know, it took a period of 2 days for her to find out. And then there seems to be this moment when she found out, which she refers to here. At first, I didn't believe it was true. Well, there has to be a bang there for it to be that moment, that at first moment. And, you know, when I found out, and she was asked previously, let's just go back and check on the words. She was asked, did there come a moment when they said, this is what happened, that we did it? And she doesn't answer that question. But then she says, when I found out, it was all so quick. It just happened just like you could snap your fingers. She's described a slow burn of finding out and something that happens very, very quickly. Both can't be true, can they? So in this section here, she is really low on the specifics. Again, no detail at all. I think she's low on authentic detail as well. I find it very hard to understand what it is she means when she's talking about this. All apart from, I was scared. Okay, she's going to talk about now the relationship with her then husband, Jeff.
There are people who want to believe that you are just an evil bitch and that you're making all this up and trying to play like some sweetheart.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there, but, you know, that's just because they don't know me. And that's what they have read in the newspaper or something like that.
You've pleaded guilty to hindering prosecution. You've lied to the FBI. Do you think people will ever believe you now, knowing that you've already lied?
If they know the circumstances, I think that they would understand.
Among the lingering questions is whose handwriting is on notes that may have been written by Tonya and Jeff. On the notes was the name of the rink where Nancy Kerrigan practiced. The notes were found in what is purported to be Tonya and Jeff's trash, dumped miles away from their former home. Was that your trash?
Well, I guess it was our trash, but I mean, I recognize Jeff's handwriting, but I don't know anything else about the paper.
So it wasn't your handwriting on that paper?
All I recognized was Jeff's handwriting.
But was it your handwriting?
I just recognized his.
The other thing is allegedly making phone calls to determine Nancy Kerrigan's, where she practiced and what her practice schedule was. Did you make any of those phone calls?
No, I didn't.
Did you make any phone calls about Nancy Kerrigan in any way, shape, or form?
Nope.
But according to this woman, freelance skating writer Vera Marano, Harding did make a phone call asking about Nancy Kerrigan in the days before the attack. We reminded Harding of that call. Are you familiar with what Vera Marano told the FBI?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Did you call Vera Marano?
Yeah, Jeff bet me that there was this thing about where Nancy lived.
Tonya says the call was made not because she was part of the plot, but because she and Jeff had a bet going about where Nancy Kerrigan lived and practiced.
It was like a bet, you know. And so I said, well, I can prove it, you know. So I called up there and asked her, and she goes, yeah, this is da-da-da-da, you know.
And about where she practiced? You came up with a bet about where she practiced?
I really don't remember the whole conversation.
And this is a coincidence that these guys are planning a plot and you're having this bet, but
see, I wasn't ever around, you know. I mean, anybody can pull off anything and behind anybody's back and you wouldn't even know it.
And you're the innocent in all of this?
I didn't say I was innocent. I did lie, and I did try to help cover up, but I'm paying for that now. I had to give up my amateur career. You know, I had to give up my life, basically, for what Jeff did and what Sean did.
And that's the story?
Yes.
The whole story?
Yes.
What really happened?
Yes.
This is the truth.
Yes.
Wow, so much to unpack in that episode, that excerpt there. There are people who want to believe you're just an evil bitch. I do. The 1990s way of treating women was not great in interviews. And you're making all this up and trying to play like some sweetheart. Tonya says, yeah, there's a lot of people out there, but, you know, that's just because they don't know me, and that's what they have read in the newspaper or something like that. So it's put to her, there are people there that believe you're evil and you're making all this up. And what does she say? Yeah, there are a lot of people out there. No specifics again. It's the truth. Look, out there, there's a window. There's a lot of people out there. It's the truth. But she doesn't take on the point of the question. There's people out there that believe you're evil and you're making all this up. She just does not take on any of that at all. She just takes on the fact that there are people in the world. What a revelation that one is. But you know, we've got a you know, that's just because they don't know me. So we've got this just minimizing it down to something else again. It's not because they know some of the evidence or have theories or stories or have heard more there. They just because they don't know me, and that's what they have read in the newspaper or something like that. The interviewer says, you pleaded guilty to hindering prosecution. You've lied to the FBI. Do you think people will ever believe you now, knowing that you've already lied? Tonya says, if they know the circumstances, I think that they would understand. Now, again, she doesn't take on any part of the question in reality there, but I do believe she knows that. If people knew the circumstances, I think they would understand. It's very straightforward. It's very direct. Doesn't deal with the question. She's still running away from talking about the meat of what is being put to her, which she's done a lot, I hope you can see. But I do believe that she thinks that. Then and I left some of this in just so we had some of the context. Her handwriting was found on some notes detailing some information about Nancy, and the question is put to her. The notes were found in what was purported to be Tanya and Jeff's trash, dumped miles away from their former home. The question is then asked, was that your trash? She says, well, red flag. When someone answers a question and it starts with, well, it means you're not going to get the answer you expect. Was that your trash? It's a yes or no question again. Yeah, it was my trash. No, it wasn't my trash. I don't know if that was my trash or not would also be an acceptable answer there. Anything else is interesting. And she starts with, well, that means you're going to get an explanation. Red flag for not answering the question. I guess it was our trash, is what she says. So I guess it was, not very certain. Our trash. So the question was that your trash, single person, I think. And she says our trash, bringing Jeff into it and not just her. Then she says, I mean, I recognize Jeff's handwriting, but I don't know anything. I don't know anything else about the paper. I don't know anything else about the paper. So I guess it was our trash. I recognize Jeff's handwriting, but a distance there. It's not, that is Jeff's handwriting. It's, I recognize Jeff's handwriting, but I don't know anything about, and she's going to say, I don't know anything about the paper, but then she says anything else about the paper, which is, I know it's Jeff's handwriting there, but I don't know anything else about it. That might be a minor pedantic type thing there, but she self-corrected there. She's asked again, so it wasn't your handwriting on that paper? It's a yes/no question again. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. All I recognised was Jeff's handwriting. She doesn't answer the question that is there. She deliberately now is avoiding answering the question about was that her handwriting on the paper with details of Nancy Kerrigan's whereabouts on it. The interviewer tries again. But was it your handwriting? And again, she doesn't answer the question. I just recognised his. Got that word just. I told you, it appears in deception so often, and there must be deception going on here because she's twice dodged answering whether that is her handwriting on the note. Then we're brought into the fact that Tonya apparently made phone calls trying to find out Nancy Kerrigan's whereabouts. Now, this is how deception could happen. Did you make any of those phone calls? Tonya's asked. No, I didn't, she says. Now that at first glance is straightforward. It's a yes/no question. And she says no. And she says, I didn't. It's not I did not. That's all quite straightforward. But we should never take one answer in isolation. Why? Did you in any way make phone calls about Nancy Kerrigan in any way, shape or form? And here, and she's been quite reliable in using yes and no all the way through. She says, nope. Very slangy, nope. And also, very, very muted, no. It's just all one step down from saying no. A very firm, but very small, simple word where we know what it means. It was this, nope, is what she said. But then it's brought to her attention that someone says that she did make a phone call. She made a phone call to this woman, Vera. Vera says she called me to find out about Nancy Kerrigan in the days before the attack. She's asked, are you familiar with what Vera Marano told the FBI? And she this time uses so not yes, so a bit apprehensive here. She's used yes quite a few times, but no, this is What happened? Did you call Vera Marano? Yeah, she says, slangy, yeah. She's still not committed full-time to acknowledging this. Jeff had bet me that there was this thing about where Nancy lived, and we've got more Tonya's vagueness, this thing. Jeff had bet me there was this thing about where Nancy lived. Then it's explained to us that Tonya says the call was made not because she was part of the plot, but because she and Jeff had a bet about where Nancy Kerrigan lived and practiced. She says it was like a bet, you know? We've got our favourite you know there, where she's said something, and look, I think this may well be a tell that Tonya is being deceptive when she uses you know. She wants to make sure it's landed. And this was her saying, it was like a bet, you know? Have you got that? It was a bet. I wasn't phoning up for any nefarious reasons to find out where she was going to be so we could organise this attack. But she doesn't say it was a bet. She says it was like a bet. Not a bet, just like a bet, you know? And then she says, and so I said, well, I can prove it, you know? So I called up Vera and asked her, and she goes, yeah, this is blah, 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 you know. What do we want to pull out of that one? Because this is quite instructive. This is a very crucial thing here. She's denied making phone calls about Nancy Kerrigan. Now she's being forced to admit she did make phone calls about Nancy Kerrigan. And she's storytelling. She's and so storytelling. And so storytelling is where rather than just listing events and explaining events that happened, we start giving reasons for them. And this happened, so this happened. And so I said, well, I can prove it, you know. So, another, and so I called up Vera and asked her, and she goes, yeah, this is blah, 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 you know. Blah, 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 more, Tonya, lack of specifics, and you know, again, has there been some deception there? About where she practiced, she's asked, she came up with a bet about where she's practiced, and she decides at this point, it's avoidance again. She's hitting that big off-ramp of not talking about this. I really don't remember the whole conversation, is what she said. Got that persuasive word really in there. It's not I don't remember, it's I really don't remember. It's not just I don't remember. I want to persuade you that this is true by upping the severity by using words like really. I really don't remember the whole conversation. It's not I don't remember what was said, because we know she's talking about this bet. She just wants to say I don't remember the whole conversation, i.e., this is going to sound really bad if I say, yes, the bet was about where she practiced. So I'm going to pull out of this now and we're going to go avoiding this. I really don't remember the whole conversation. That's a coincidence that these guys are planning a plot and you're having this bet. This is a yes-no question. Yeah, it's a coincidence. No, it's not. And she says, see. Now, this is the first time I think I've seen this in one of these episodes, because when someone starts an answer with well or so, I do say, red flag. You know, you're getting an explanation here, not an answer to the question. C is another one that I've never noticed before, but she's doing it now. C means I'm telling you what you need to see. I'm giving you an explanation, not answering your question. C, I wasn't ever around, you know? Oh my God, you know again. I mean, anybody can pull off anything behind anybody's back and you wouldn't even know it. Not specific at all there. Anybody can pull off anything behind anybody's back and you wouldn't even know it. Anybody, not my husband, not these guys, could pull off anything, a plot to attack one of my rivals behind my back, not anybody's back, and I wouldn't even know it. These guys pulled this off and I didn't know anything about it. This is just brought out to a could. Anybody can, not did, anybody can pull off anything behind anybody's back and you wouldn't even know it. That's kind of true. But it's not talking about the specifics of the situation and the people involved. Tonya, her husband, his associates. and you're innocent of all of this. And she says, I didn't say I was innocent, I did lie. Straightforward again, none of these persuasive words, and actually some real content in them. I didn't say I was innocent, I did lie. I know exactly what that means, and I did try to help cover up, but I'm paying for that now. I had to give up my amateur career, I had to give up my life basically for what Jeff and what Sean did. So what we have here is for what Jeff and what Sean did. So we have them in a different order this time. Husband comes first, friend comes second, friend of husband, Sean comes second. But you'll notice that it seems to be two different things they did. It's not, I had to give up my life for what Jeff and Sean did. It's, I had to give up my life for what Jeff did and what Sean did. Two different things. And she says, I had to give up my life basically for what Jeff did and what Sean did. When we put something as basically, it means I'm being really simple about this. There's a lot more to it than that. I didn't have to give up my life. I had to give up some of my life, which is why it's phrased as, I had to give up my life basically. Again, it's persuasive. It's an ly word, like really basically is an ly word. You didn't give up your life. You're just saying basically you gave up your life. And that's the story. Yes, she says, the whole story. Yes, she says, what really happened? Yes, she says, this is the truth. Yes. So she does say some yeses at the end of that there, some straightforward yeses saying this is the truth and that is the whole story. And they do hold together a lot better than some of the other things there. However, they don't assure me that much, because here the trash talk is avoided. The talk of, is that your signature? That is a big red flag that is that your handwriting? Is a big red flag for me of avoidance. The bet story seems fabricated. So much of the language about that, it was like a bet and so on, does seem fabricated. And also watch out for mm-hms and you knows. I think those are indicators of deception or lack of confidence in what she's saying with Tonya Harding. So that was 1996. We're going to go forward 2 years to 1998 in a moment, and we're going to see if there's any differences between what she said just after the attack and what she said 2 years later. Now listen, have you ever felt that someone's holding back on things or not giving you the full story? Tonya, hello. Listen, you're not a paranoid person, you're a perceptive person if that's what you feel. You're probably noticing a lot of the things that we're talking about in this episode. But lots of people miss the clues hiding in plain sight. They feel them, but they can't rationalise them. But you don't have to be like that, because I'm here to show you what's really being said and also what's not being said by someone. Every case I break down like this will sharpen your instincts and change how you see conversations forever. So if you're ready to see through the noise, hit the subscribe button or follow this channel. It means you've got an episode like this every single week, allowing you to upskill yourself in understanding what the words that someone says in your life, or in a case like this, what those words really mean. Step inside this world by hitting subscribe or following this channel and help this get to more people, because maybe you know someone who keeps getting misled, who keeps falling for things. Maybe they need to know some of this too. If you want to send content like this their way, hit the like button or share it with them directly, recommend it to them, but just hitting the like button means this gets to many more people. You pressing that like button might just change the way one person sees the world. Let's go to 1998 now and Tonya Harding.
What's the stupidest thing you did in this whole saga?
Trusted somebody I shouldn't have.
Are you talking about Jeff Gillooly, your former husband? In what sense? I mean, were you literally telling the truth in that little clip we opened the program with when you said you knew nothing of this plot whatsoever until it happened?
I knew nothing until 2 days after I got home. And the whole thing was just so blown out of proportion. I didn't know which way I was going, which way anybody was going. And
I don't know what you mean by that.
I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, I was so confused about who was doing what, and I mean, every time I wanted to do something, I couldn't do it. I was being pulled around to doing different things with other people that I didn't really want to be doing, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Nobody would ever tell me. To this day, Jeff never told me that he actually did it.
At what point, you mean he still denies his involvement? At what point did you become convinced that people who were working with and for you had committed this hideous deed?
When he and his friends took me up into the mountains and told me point blank with a gun in their hand that Either I will go with them in there and tell their side of the story, or they'll take care of me.
Your reaction was fear, I guess. Was it also anger?
Yes. I was very, very scared. And the thing is
Did you
that
think Jeff Gillooly was going to kill you?
I didn't know. I mean, when somebody has a gun at them, at your, pointing at you, saying, "See this? This is what's going to happen to you if you do not go along with our story."
Can you see there that some of the story has changed? Let's dig into it. What's the stupidest thing you did in this whole saga, asks the interviewer. Trusted somebody I shouldn't have, says Tonya. Trusted somebody I shouldn't have. That's one person, and she trusted that person. But again, we're light on things here. This is very much like they're being associated with something here. It's not very full of detail. We don't know exactly what it is she means by that when she says that. Trusted somebody I shouldn't have. And, very much like this being associated thing, it's like, not her fault. I was a good person. I was trusting. That's a good quality. So the stupidest thing I did was be a nice person and trust someone. Are we talking about Jeff Gillooly, your former husband, asked the interviewer. And she says, mm-hmm. And that's sort of a yes. It's a yes-no question. And she gives up, But I think there's a lack of commitment to this there. Is the person she trusted someone else? Is this Sean person anything to do with that? That's a guess of mine. Based on some of her words, I think Sean was more important in all of this than in some ways Jeff was. In what sense, says the interviewer? I mean, you were literally telling the truth in that little... were you literally telling the truth in that little clip we opened the programme with, which is the one you heard at the beginning of this episode, when you said you knew nothing of this plot whatsoever until it happened? And she says, I knew nothing until 2 days after I got home. And the whole thing was just so blown out of proportion. And I didn't know which way I was going, which way anybody was going. And... Now, previously, when we listened to her in 1994, she said, I did not know anything about it until I got home, suggesting she got home and knew something about it. Here, it's slightly different. The two things could hang together, but it is slightly different. I knew nothing about this until 2 days after I got home. So previously it was I got home and I did not know anything about it until I got home. Now it's until 2 days after I got home. And is how she leaves that dangling. And the interviewer has picked up on this vagueness, the fact that she says things that seem to have something to them, but actually have no substance to them whatsoever. The interviewer says, I don't know what you mean by that. She says, I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, I was so confused about who was doing what. And I mean, every time I wanted to do something, I couldn't do it. Does that explain it any more to you? I didn't understand what was going on. Now, you'll notice that I didn't know what was going on. Slightly different thing to I didn't understand what was going on. So what does she mean by that? What didn't she understand? And what was going on again as well? What was going on was there was an attack on your rival. Is that what you didn't understand? Or is there a little bit more to it than that you didn't understand? Again, it's not very clear. I mean, I was so confused about who was doing what. Who was doing what? Again, she doesn't say. I was so confused by what these guys had done, or I knew they'd done something, but I didn't know quite who'd done what, and she doesn't say. And I mean, every time I wanted to do something, I couldn't do it. And she's taken a long jump there from, I don't know what you mean by that, to every time I wanted to do something, I couldn't do it, i.e. I was pinned down here in some way. She then says, I was being pulled around to doing different things with other people that I didn't really want to be doing. And I'm like, well, what is going on? Nobody would ever tell me. To this day, Jeff never told me that he actually did it. So I was being pulled around to doing different things. Now that pulled around interests me. It's a slightly violent term. It certainly suggests quite a lot of action of which she was not a willing participant. Very much like what happened to Nancy. She had something done to her. She was not a willing participant. I was being pulled around to do different things. What? With other people. Who? That I didn't really want to be doing. Now, was that I didn't really want to be doing, but I was doing, or I was all right doing, but I really didn't want to do it. I really don't want to do the vacuuming, but I do it. It feels very much like that level of thing there. I didn't really want to be doing. And I'm like, well, what's going on? Present tense, what's going on? Not what's gone on, what's going on. Nobody would ever tell me. To this day, Jeff never told me that he actually did it, which we have again and we saw previously. But again, what is it? that he actually did it, because he didn't do it. He didn't do the physical attack on Nancy. He seems to have plotted it or planned it, but never did it. At what point? You mean he still denies his involvement? Asks the interviewer, and she says, Again, lack of commitment to just saying yes there. Slightly nervous about what she's saying. He still denies his involvement. At what point did you become convinced that people who were working with and for you had committed this hideous deed? She says, when he and his friends took me up to the mountains and he told me point blank with a gun in their hand that either I will go with them in there and tell their side of the story, or they'll take care of me. Now, what we got going on there is just some real strange talking. So this is different from the previous answer, because she avoided in 1994 saying there was a point where she found this out. Now she's telling this story. When he and his friends took me up to the mountains and told me point blank with a gun, so a singular gun in their hand. A singular hand, but there is more than one person. This doesn't quite hang together as a description. A gun in their hand. That either I will go with them in there and tell their side of the story, when it's hard for me to read, it's hard for me to picture. So I know sometimes I'm like, what am I saying here? That's exactly what's going on in my head. What am I saying here? What is she saying in here? And tell their side of the story, or they'll take care of me. Now that's interesting. Take care of me could be a gangster movie. Take care of him. But also it could be argued that they were, when commissioning this plot, taking care of her. They were taking care of Tonya and eliminate one of her rivals from the Olympics. Interesting choice of phrasing there, that these guys will take care of me. Your reaction was fear, I guess, says the interviewer. Was it also anger? She says, yes, I was very, very scared. And the thing is that your reaction was fear. Was it also anger? She says, yes, I believe there was fear there. Before she said there was something going on where she was scared, and I said, I believe that. Your reaction was fear. Was it also anger? Now, there's two questions there. Your reaction was fear. Was it also anger? She takes on the fear part, because she says, yes, I believe that. I was very, very scared. She uses a persuasive very twice there. So it's not just she was scared. She was very, very scared. And she tries to do some explaining here. And the thing is that, but she gets cut off. And she's asked, did you think Jeff Gahuli was going to kill you? She says, I didn't know. Now, that suggests to me that no, because if she did think that, she'd just say, yes, I was in fear of my life that he was going to kill me. But she says, I didn't know. Now, I know you can still be frightened of someone if you think they might kill you, but you're not 100% sure. I'm not saying she wasn't scared. What I am saying is I don't think she believed that Jeff was going to kill her, because she says, I didn't know. And then she tries to explain that. And she says, again, this is one of those ones where it's all sort of mixed. I mean, when something has a gun at them, so she does say something. I checked many times not to check that she didn't say when someone has a gun at them, but it's when something has a gun at them. So this is not her talking about herself again. This is talking about a third party. When something has a gun at them, at your, pointing at you, saying, see this is going to be what's going to happen to you if you do not go along with our story. That is not her describing her experience. This is her talking in a wider sense here. Now, the reason why we could do that sometimes is to socialize it. When you're scared, you're really scared, to make people think about, if it was me, yeah, I'd be really scared. That might be why people do that again. But what it isn't is her authentic experience of what happened to her. She's not explaining that to us. So here, years on, she is low on the specifics again. All sorts of vagueness in her language, and also that mountaintop thing, being told this, having gone at her and so on, is really low on authentic language. We're going to get more on that mountain meeting. But you are a podcast person, because you're getting this, and this is an exclusive part of the analysis. This section is just for you, for being a podcast person, listening to how Tonya talks about her husband and the relationship they have together.
Had he been an abusive husband prior to that?
Yes.
Did he literally beat you?
Yes. I have police reports and friends that, people didn't understand. I went and skated, practiced at midnight until 1:30, 3 days a week, before nationals and before Olympics and everything, because I couldn't go in the morning, because I had bruises all over my face.
So it would happen on a frequent basis? Mm-hmm. What would be the reason for his rage? Why would he do that to you?
I don't know. He wasn't happy with something, or the house wasn't cleaned up, or I didn't have dinner ready for him when he got home. I mean, it varied.
Can you estimate, as you sit here today, how many times you were battered by your former husband?
No.
Was it dozens of times?
Yes. We were together for 7 years, and I can't tell you how many times it happened.
Tonya's asked, was he an abusive husband prior to that? And she says, yes. Did he literally beat you? She says, yes. 2 yes/no questions, and she gives very straightforward yeses to them, not mm-hms or anything like that. I believe this. I believe this guy was an abusive husband. Then she goes on and goes a little bit extra and says, I have police reports and friends that, people didn't understand. I went and skated, practiced at midnight until 1:30, 3 days a week, before nationals and before Olympics and everything, because I couldn't go in the morning because I had bruises all over my face. So she's now trying to be more descriptive on the beatings. It's not just the fact that they happened. She wants to provide some evidence that they happened. I have police reports and friends that, people didn't understand. So how often were these beatings? Why does she feel the need to persuade us that these happened is a question that I have. And then, and this is just for you podcast people, because no one else will get this, but you'll spot some deception later. Just remember that I went and skated, practiced at midnight until 1:30, 3 days a week, because I couldn't go in the morning because I had bruises all over my face. So there is some point, she's saying there, where she couldn't train in the morning. And I want you to remember that and notice it when it comes up later on in the analysis. So it would happen on a frequent basis. And she says, less sure about that answer. It's not the yes that we heard at the very beginning. If you want to rewind a little bit and just listen to the difference in confidence when she answers some of these questions, I think that he did beat her. Did it happen on a frequent basis? I'm not so sure. That doesn't excuse beating someone, by the way. I'm just trying to get to the truth of what I said here. And then she's asked, what would be the reason for his rage? Why would he do that to you? And she says, I don't know. He wasn't happy with something, or the house wasn't cleaned up, or I didn't have dinner ready for him when he got home. It just varied. So what would be the reason for his rage? She says, I don't know. And then goes on to give reasons. I don't know the reason, but then there are some reasons. He wasn't happy with something. Again, low in specifics. Or the house wasn't cleaned up, or I didn't have dinner ready for him when he got home. All sort of cliches here. Not, for me, leaning on reality here. He wasn't happy with something, and that I don't know, and then goes on to give reasons. Can you estimate, as you sit here today, how many times you were battered by your former husband? And she says no. I believe that. She can't estimate. For some reason, she can't estimate. Could be because it's numerous times. It could be because she's being a little bit deceptive about how often it happened. Was it dozens of times? Yes, she says, so dozens of times. We were married for 7 years, and I can't tell you how many times it happened. I can't tell you. Now that's interesting. It's not I don't know. It's I can't tell you. Why can't she tell? Is it because she just has no number in her head, unable to fathom a number? Or is it because she wants to make it appear that this happened more frequently than it did? I can't say again. It shouldn't have happened once. I'm not trying to excuse this. I'm just trying to dig into Tonya's words to see what happened. So in that section there, I believe the beatings did take place, but not to the extent that she claims. And remember, because you're a podcast person, you know more about what is coming up. Nancy couldn't train some mornings. Sorry, Tonya couldn't train some mornings. I'm going to get the two of them mixed up all episode long. Thank you for being a podcast person, a great part of the Never a Truer Word community. Let's get back and join everyone else analysing Tonya Harding.
So when the gun was pulled in this mountain meeting that you described, did you feel that he would carry through that threat? Did you feel that he would actually take your life if you snitched on him?
I didn't know if it would be him or not.
Or one of the thugs that surrounded him. When he started putting together this bizarre team of people that he knew, some from childhood, people with records, bullies, weren't you curious about that? Weren't you?
But see, I wasn't around. I was always training, getting ready for nationals, doing my costumes. I had boot problems, and I was hardly ever around. Sure, I knew John, and I had been to his house a couple of times, but I really didn't like going over there. And
Sean Eckert, one of the principal conspirators in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. So how long after that meeting did you finally have the courage to talk, or was it only after the authorities came and threatened you with arrest?
No, I told the authorities when I went in to talk to them. And I also told them that I wanted protection.
From him? Mm-hmm. Are you still frightened of him?
Yes, but I don't see him. But when I've seen him on the road before, and I shake.
So when the gun was pulled in the mountain meeting that you described, did you feel that he would carry through that threat? Did you feel he would actually take your life if you snitched on him? Yes, no question again, and she doesn't yes or no with the answer. I don't know if it would be him or not. What is she getting at here? So did you feel he would carry out that threat? I think this is still talking about the husband, Jeff, but I didn't know if it would be him or not. Again, is this point towards Sean? She does seem to have something going on with Sean there. Is that what she's getting at there? One of the thugs that surrounded him, says the interviewer, when he started putting together this bizarre team of people that he knew, some from childhood, people with records, bullies, weren't you curious about that? And she says, see, and we have the C at the start of the answer again. I'm going to give you an explanation. I'm not going to give you quite an answer to the question. Weren't you curious about that? No, I wasn't curious. That's just what Jeff did. Yeah, I was curious, but I was really busy, so I let it slide. C, I wasn't around is not that sort of answer. C, I wasn't around. That is very concrete. I wasn't around. Also, by the way, again, using the abbreviated form, wasn't. I was always training. She says, I was always training. When someone talks in 100% absolute terms, very, very rarely true. They're doing it to be persuading or convincing. I wasn't around. I was always training, getting ready for nationals, doing my costumes. I had boot problems and I was hardly ever around. Which one's the truth? Were you hardly ever around or were you not around? Because you've said both. I wasn't around and I was hardly ever around. I know which one's the truth. It will be hardly ever around. Then she says, sure, I knew Sean, and she brings up Sean. I think Sean is a big thing for her for some reason. And if you are an aficionado of this case, do let me know in the comments or get in touch on social media. Why is she more fixated on Sean than she is at times on her husband? Sure, I knew Sean and I had been to his house a couple of times, but I really didn't like going over there. It doesn't answer the question about were you curious or not. Sean Eckert, says the interviewer, one of the principal conspirators in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. So how long after that meeting did you finally have the courage to talk? Or was it only after the authorities came and threatened you with arrest? And she says, no. Funnily enough, she does funnily manage a no. I told the authorities when I went in to talk to them. I also told them that I wanted protection. So this is a bit of off-ramping. So this feels to me like, when did you talk to the authorities? Why did you talk to the authorities? What did you say to authorities? Sensitive to Tonya, which is why she's going, yeah, I did this, I talked to them, but I needed protection. I was very, very scared. I want the focus to be on that. It's an off-ramp. It's like avoidance. I'd rather talk about the protection and how scared I was than my decision to talk to the authorities. So I also told them I wanted protection. The interviewer says from him. I'm presuming that means from Jeff, but it could be from Sean. And she goes, Again, low commitment in the answer. Are you still frightened of him, says the interviewer. Yeah, but I don't see him, says Tonya. But I've seen him on the road before and I shake. Got this thing going on again where she says something and then contradicts herself very, very close afterwards. Yes, but I don't see him, but I have seen him on the road before and I shake. Finishing again with how frightened she is, how nervous she is there, hoping that part is picked up rather than anything else. So in this section here, who or what is she frightened of? Again, low on the specifics there. Is it Sean? Is it Jeff? She doesn't really say. And why is she frightened of them? Again, she doesn't expand on that. And as before, a question about her involvement. She's evasive around that. This was about, were you not curious? And she just goes into the C explanation there. Tonya Harding, ice skater, made it to the Olympics. I'm fascinated by the psychology of elite sport people, and I believe Tonya is one of those elite sport people. To be selected to represent your country at an event like ice skating means you are an elite sport person. I'm fascinated by their psychology, so I've been fascinated looking into this. I do think Tonya was the ultimate competitor, but how? far would she go to be that ultimate competitor? Is this revealed in this excerpt?
Your detractors, however, said you had plenty of opportunity to let someone know, and that you really wanted to beat Nancy Kerrigan so badly that either consciously or subconsciously you were approving of this dreadful plot to break her knee.
Let me answer something. For one thing, I could beat Nancy with my skating. I was ready. I was in the best shape of my life. I was landing triple axel. I had beaten her before. I was ready. I was skating in the morning. I was skating at night. I was ready for that competition. The only reason why he did this is because he found out that I was going to leave him as soon as I was done going to nationals.
Had you made that very clear to him?
No.
How did he find out?
Somebody from the rink told him.
What did they say?
I don't know.
You really were planning on leaving, Jeff?
I had already divorced him. I got a call from someone who was in the United States Figure Skating Association who told me that they liked him and they thought that I had a very stable life when I was with him. Obviously, they didn't know anything because they weren't there. They never saw it, but my friends and my family did. And they said, well, if you don't go back with him, you won't get the marks you deserve. And I asked them, I said, well, what do you mean? You mean to tell me if I go out there and I skate a perfect program, you're not going to give me the marks I deserve if I'm not with him? And she said, well, it's something like that.
Your detractors, however, said you had plenty of opportunity to let someone know and that you really wanted to beat Nancy Kerrigan so badly that either consciously or subconsciously you were approving of this dreadful plot to break her knee. This is a question, once more, about were you involved in the plot to do this? Did you have prior knowledge? Did you commission it? Could you have stopped it? That's what this question is all about. And what do we see again? You're right, avoidance. She says, let me answer something, taking control of the situation, very much like that first thing which we saw. I'm not even going to answer this question. I'm going to let me answer something, but not this question. Let me answer something. And then she goes on to give her ultimate competitor speech. For one thing, I could beat Nancy with my skating. I was ready. I was in the best shape of my life. I was landing triple axel. I had beaten her before. I was ready. I was skating in the morning. I was skating at night. I was ready for that competition. The only reason why he did this is because he found out that I was going to leave him as soon as I was done going to nationals. Once more, a question about involvement. And she didn't answer the question about involvement at all. Maybe all of that is true. Maybe she could have beaten him. Maybe she was doing triple axels. Maybe she was training morning and night. Maybe she was ready to do this. But she doesn't answer the question. And we've got to ask why. And why persistently does she not answer the question about prior knowledge or prior involvement in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan? So she has said that she was going to leave Jeff. Had you made that very clear to him? And Tonya says, no, believe that. How did he find out? Somebody from the rink told him, says Tonya. What did they say? She says, I don't know. Right? That's a really believable answer. When someone says, I don't know, tend to trust them. Do yourself a favour, tend to trust them. They don't know. She doesn't know what was said. Now, that's interesting in itself. Does she not know the exact words, or does she not know what was said at all? You were really planning on leaving, Jeff? Yes, no question. Were you planning on leaving, Jeff? Yes, I was. No, I wasn't. And she doesn't answer with a yes or no. She says, I had already divorced him. Again, this is not something I'm really intimate with as a story. Had she divorced them when they were back together or something like that? Comments, please, if you know. And then she says, I got a call from someone who was in the United States Figure Skating Association. Not easy to say, but that's because it's alliteration. Who told me that they liked him and they thought I had a very stable life when I was with him. Obviously, they didn't know anything because they weren't there. They never saw it, but my friends and family did. Again, we've got this vagueness. I think she's talking about abuse and beatings, but didn't see what. She's not very specific in this. And they said, well, if you don't go back with them, you won't get the marks you deserved. And I asked them, I said, what do you mean? You mean to tell me if I go out there and I skate the perfect program, you're not going to give me the marks I deserve if I'm not with him? She said, well, it's something like that. Now, this is real distance. The question that was asked was, were you planning on leaving Jeff? Really simply can be carried off with a yes or no. Instead, we get this call and we get this conspiracy theory. So from the I've divorced him, it's soft allegations of rigged scoring in the whole professional skating world. So in that section there, More avoidance. That's all I've got to say. She's avoiding everything. Were you planning on leaving, Jeff? Avoids. Talks about conspiracy theories. Were you part of the plot? Avoids. And talks about something else entirely. Lots of avoidance from Tonya Harding when asked about was she part of the plot. And that's my conclusion, right? I don't think I can be convinced that she wasn't part of the plot, that she wasn't in on this at the start, because she avoids every single part of that. And some of the stories that she has to use to build up credibility around that don't feel authentic to me either. So in my opinion, has she assured me that she was innocent of plotting this attack? No, she hasn't. I think there's a lot more to the story, and that's why we see the words that we see from Tonya Harding. What about you? What do you think? Let me know in the comments here if you can, or get in touch on social media. You'll find all the links at neveratruerword.com. Also there, you'll find a link to the Facebook group so you can join and suggest episodes just like this one was suggested in the Facebook group. And if you're interested in some classic old crimes, then you will find them broken down in video or podcast format. That's all at neveratruerword.com. And we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.